Welcome, everybody, to the Grind Path to Pro podcast, episode 15. I'm your host, NaoriMizuki, as I can't say as usual anymore because Sci-Fi has started hosting these. God damn. Anyway, it me, and I'm here with another stack of fantastic guests for you guys and some great topics as well. Just before we get into that, I just want to remind everybody that at the end of the episode, we will host a question and answer session. So feel free to pop your questions into Twitch chat, or alternatively, if you type in !grind, it'll give you a link to our Discord server. You're welcome to come join us and pop your questions into the Q&A channel. With that being said, let's dive straight in. I'm going to do my usual, who are you and why should we care? So, Paulsible, I'm going to start with you. Who are you and why should we care?
I got nothing for the second part, but I'm a caster coming up, do a lot of tier 2, tier 3 in EU and NA. Both trials this season, right? EU trials having wrapped up last week, or the week before now, technically, because it's Monday. And now doing North American trials, and that's me.
All right, and Hunni, who are you and why should we care?
You should care because I'm playing in Overwatch Contenders for you in EU. I'm playing for Young and Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
We just re-qualified for Contenders, so I'm really happy about that. I think that's it.
That's it, nice. And finally, Awkward, who are you and why should we care?
Well, I'm Awkward, and I play flex support for Triumph in Contenders Trials NA. And why should you care? Because probably one day I'm gonna be in Overwatch League and get you a discount on my jersey. So
I like that answer. I'm gonna clip that and put it on our social media. Use code the grind.
Use code.
Cool. So those are our guests for today, guys. You can see the topics in our little overlay. Expertly made up by Sci-Fi. But I'm just going to go over them quickly. So obviously we do a short little interview with each of the guests, and we're going to talk about Season 2 trials, obviously EU that's just finished, and NA that's just started. Going to talk a little bit about the PTR changes, and then we've got some fun towards the end of the show before we do our Q&A. So look out for that. Now let's jump straight into the interviews. And Paul, I'm going to start with you once again. So let's start with, how did you get into esports in general? Like, was Overwatch your first thing, or have you come over from something else? Tell us a bit about your story.
So Overwatch actually was my first thing. I actually got into esports really late compared to most of the people I've met in the Overwatch scene. I really didn't start doing anything with esports until Overwatch League started. I'd always played video games when I was a kid. I started on just a Game Boy playing Pokemon when I was 3. And I played games all the way throughout my childhood. But, one day I think I was actually playing Overwatch, and my buddy who I play a lot with was like, "Hey, dude, do you watch the Overwatch League?" And I was like, "No, I don't really do esports. I haven't really watched any of it." And you have to see this. And I tuned into, I forget which match it was specifically. It was some Soul game in the first couple of weeks, and I was instantly hooked. And then from there, it kind of just snowballed out of control, and now I've been casting for, what now? 8 months.
So Overwatch was your first thing. How did sorry, pardon me. How did you get your first casting gig? I mean, obviously those things don't just kind of happen. What kind of avenue?
It's funny you say that. So I first was interested in casting one time when I was doing a watch party with a bunch of my buddies for Overwatch League, and the speakers died. So as a joke, I started casting over the game, right? And a couple of my buddies were like, "Yo, dude, you're really good you're better than the Overwatch League guys." This is categorically false. Completely wrong. Even now. Just terribly incorrect. But it was enough to get me going. But my internet at the apartment I was at the time was really bad. So I still just casted to myself in my room most of the time. And then months later in August, I moved into a new place, got more stable internet. It was the week that I moved into my new place and got stable enough internet to start looking into actually casting was when BGG, Broadcast.gg, actually put out their casting call for for Open Division Season 3 2018. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'll apply just to get feedback on it. and I did some solo VOD over an EU Contenders match, and I actually made it in, which surprised me a lot at the time. And then from there, I just kept grinding, kept working my way up as much as I can.
That's actually the exact same time that I joined BGG. So it was both of our first seasons. What?
It was a lot of people's first season, I think.
Yeah.
That was when BGG really expanded too.
Yeah, that's when it kind of blew up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, so we have similar stories then. So where can people expect to see you next? I know you are doing NA trials at the moment. Is that kind of the extent, or?
As far as I know for now. Yep.
As far as you know. Is that as far as you know, or is that as far as you're allowed to disclose?
That is as far as I know on paper, it is a thing that exists. There are other things where I've been told, like, hey, this might be happening, and I'm like, cool, that doesn't help me right now, but I'll keep it in mind.
All right, cool. Let's move on to Hunni. So tell us a little bit. Was Overwatch the first game you ever played competitively, or did you transition from a different game?
I actually played League of Legends at first. I played with Kelix and Nerfed, also Danes. Kelix from Overwatch League, of course. And we were actually participating in a lot of in a lot of small Danish LAN events, and we were super good. Like, we were coming out on top a lot of times. And then slowly, like after playing League of Legends for a couple of years, we moved on to Counter-Strike, all of us. And I think I got a hung of Counter-Strike as well. Both Kelix and Nerfed kind of dropped out back to League of Legends and to Overwatch later on. But I kept playing Counter-Strike for a couple of years, and I reached like the semi-professional scene in the sub-tier scene in Denmark in Counter-Strike, a very big scene actually. So I was like on the brink of making it there, but then Overwatch came out, and I transitioned to it with both Kelix and Nerfed.
And what inspired you to transition? Because a lot of people still feel like League and Counter-Strike are like quote unquote superior games. So what kind of made you feel like Overwatch was where you wanted to be?
So at first it was because like I kind of got burned out because with my team in Counter-Strike, we failed to qualify for a major tournament. So I got burned out at that time. And then it was at the exact time that Overwatch came out, and I just enjoyed playing with both Kelix. He's a real good friend of mine, also in real life. So I just enjoyed playing with them, and they were like, "This can be a big thing. This can be an esports potential because of the close beta, of course. There was a lot of tournaments at that time. So we just when the open beta got released, we just decided to grind this game for a lot of time, and then when summer came around, I was just hooked on it, and I kept playing it.
And for those in the audience that only really know you from Young and Beautiful, where did your quote unquote professional journey in Overwatch start? What was your first team, your first tournament? How did you grow?
Yeah, so I don't think a lot of people know this in EU, but I actually played on Fraxters when the game got released fully from like August 2016 to December or January 17. And we played like the biggest tournament around that time was King of Nordic, where we played against Misfits and we ended up number 3, I think, behind Ninjas in Pajamas and Misfits. So I actually have some experience from that time as well, and it's my first professional experience in the game.
Damn, that's exciting. And now, how long have you been with Young and Beautiful?
I joined them. When did I join them? I joined them in February for the first trial season this year.
Oh, nice, cool. And you guys have been growing together. That's really exciting. I'm keen to see how you guys are going to do. Obviously, you just haven't come through trials, but we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
Before we get to that, let's quickly cover awkward. So, same question. How did you get into Overwatch? Did you start in an older game and transition through? How did that happen?
Yeah, I used to play Counter-Strike a lot. Like I've been competing since like on LAN events, like locally, like in Israel, since I was probably 13. I was playing like on I wouldn't say semi-professional, but like on a really high level in Counter-Strike. But then it got really kind of boring and stale for me after a while. And the story is kind of a little bit dorky because like into how I got into Overwatch, it's like actually really dorky. Me and my friends were like sitting at a bar, right? And they started. No. We're like we're not very like chads in a bar. Like we're like a group of nerds who just sit in a corner and talk about like really random crap. But like they were talking about like a game that they're playing, and I'm like what are you guys playing, right? And then like, oh wait, like we know, like they call, like my name's Danny, so they're like, oh, Danny's really good at video games. Maybe we can like bring him so he can like boost our rank because he's really good at video games. And I'm like, okay, I'll download the game if you guys buy me a beer. Like, okay, so I just basically traded to boost my friends in Overwatch. Like, it's not really boost, like, you know, to play with them. And they just bought me a beer, and I'm just really, really hooked. And I just couldn't stop playing. And I reached like really high ranks really fast. And just like, whoa, yeah, this is like kind of interesting. So,
that is
that's
possibly the best story I've heard. I've interviewed a lot of people up to episode 15, and I think that's my favorite story to date. And obviously, I mean, Counter-Strike is a very different kind of game. So how did you get from Counter-Strike to, was it Flex Support? No.
Yeah, okay. So at first, when I started playing pretty late. I started playing like at the end of season 3 in Overwatch, which is like considerably late in comparison to other players. And I started like playing DPS mostly because that kind of like naturally transitioned from Counter-Strike. Yeah. But then like I've been approached by a friend from my older games, the Hunni might know, Cafe. I've known him for like a very long time, like now it's probably 9 years. We used to play Counter-Strike 1.6 back in the day together. Jeez. And then he like said that they might need like a support for a team they're building, and he think like their friends think I'm good, and I just like transitioned to Flex Support because, you know, why not? And then it's really was really fun for me to play that role, and just like, you know, I roll with it. And that's about it.
Damn. So was that your like first team, or what was your first kind of serious team that you achieved something with?
Okay. So when I started playing the game at the end of season 3, my like Cafe approached me like and said we're building like there's an Israeli organization that is in its building, and in Israel like the gaming scene is not very big. So when like an organization approaches you like to start to try to build something in your own country, it was kind of interesting to me because I wanted to like compete professionally in Overwatch. It was like maybe a month and a half, maybe 2 months after I started playing the game, and I was like, okay, I'll play. And it was like a team called Zen Gaming Esports that has now like a player, like one of our teammates now competes in Overwatch League is EQO. So we all started playing together, and we like were contracted. We were like in a gaming house for a while. We're going to the World Cup as a team together. It was like really, really fun, and that like way we felt like I kind of started feeling what is a professional environment and like, you know, being professional.
Nice. And how did you get to Triumph? Were you like scouted, or did you like do a trial? Or because Triumph currently, I mean, they're absolute beasts. They are the Clockwork Vendetta equivalent in NA, just without the cheesy composition.
Yeah. Don't say that. Do not say that. But how I got into Triumph, I realized like for me, that's just like my opinion. Like some people might take it the wrong way, but I think playing in Europe is a lot of like it's not as beneficial as playing in North America. Europe has a really, I wouldn't say like it's really hard to compete in Europe because like, you know, you had like 1-2 slots for trials, you have like 3 slots for contenders, like 2, I don't remember how many at this point. Comparison to North America,
6. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit less than 6.
And it's really hard to because like a lot of like the scene in Europe is about like who you're friends with and who you know, and instead of like doing like a little bit of open tryouts, that's a little bit like of leaks of what it's like to like trial for European teams. But North America has like a really big fan base, like much more viewers most of the time. Like for me, naturally, like playing with Americans is more, I feel more natural, more comfortable, like playing, like being social around like Americans, like that culturally more or less. But I realized it's a bigger, like it's a smarter move for me to play in North America. That's why I did that. And things kind of started clicking, and now I'm really happy Triumph and where I'm playing.
Hell yeah. Well, I think a lot of European players are kind of echoing that same feeling. That's why we're seeing so many of them migrating over to NA at the moment. Can't say that I blame them. Not that it doesn't make me really sad to see.
Mhm.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit about trials, but before we do that, just a reminder to everybody, if you do have questions for our guests, you can pop them in the Twitch chat or !grind will bring you a link to our Discord server, and you can pop those in the guest question channel. Without further ado, let's talk a little bit about trials. And I'm going to start with you, Hunni, because obviously you guys have come from Contenders, and Yab have actually had a bit of a tumultuous history with Contenders, kind of ping-ponging a little bit between Contenders and trials. How have you guys managed to hold it together and still power through?
So coming up from the last season of Contenders, we had a lot of internal issues, especially with our management. We had some troubles in which direction we wanted to go with the team. But after sorting out some our old manager and coach, they didn't really want to go with us anymore because they didn't believe in the potential, I think. But we, the players, we kept on grinding, and we kept thinking that we would do well if we just kept grinding and find the correct players to fit together, you know.
Yeah.
And when we actually found these players and we got a new coach and we started building some really good synergy, and we had a lot of fun together. And I think it's super important to have fun when playing as well, because otherwise you will get burned out. And I think that's what happened last season. Like after 2 or 3 weeks of the Contender season, we kind of burned out a bit. We didn't really enjoy playing, but we just kept on going for the remainder of the season. So after we got relegated, we made some roster changes. We made some management changes, and then we just started practicing super hard, and it showed off. We popped off in the most of Contenders. Like we lost 4-0 in the first match against Clockwork. We tried something out, but it didn't work. But we came back and we won. We showed that we still have what it takes to be in Contenders, so that's super good.
Well, coming into the trial season, which were the teams that you were the most kind of worried about coming up against? Because I mean, there was some really good talent in trials this season.
Mm-hmm. We were the team we feared the most was Clockwork Vendetta, because we had seen some of their matches in the open division, and it seems like no one knew what to play against them. And that's also what happened in our first game. Like we tried to run some. I think Gladiators played in the Witch League against Bunkers. They went like super spam comp with Baptiste solo heal. So we tried out that, and it worked super well in our scrims when we asked people to play the Clockwork. But then when we went into the match, like it just didn't work. They were too good at adapting. So I think Clockwork was the team that we feared the most, and then obviously also Paris Academy. They had a super good roster, but for some reason they just didn't click, and they lost too many matches early on.
Yeah, I think Eternal Academy was probably the one we were most surprised about not actually managing to make it through. So you came up against Clockwork, and that unfortunately didn't go as well as you'd hoped. How were the other games? How did you feel that you guys performed in those games, despite the scoreline? Just in terms of like how the team performed, how did you guys feel?
We always believed that we could make it. Like we were confident in winning the remaining of the matches, which we did. So I think we were super confident still going in, despite losing 4-0 to Clockwork, because we knew from scrims results, we knew that we could beat anyone in EU and also match up with the best teams like the British Arcane and Anger Titans actually. And we also did that in the last season of Contenders when we scrimmed them, but it just didn't show into our officials. So we knew that we could go all the way, and so we just took one match at a time, and that's how we made it, I think.
Well, now you guys are in Contenders, and it's you and Clockwork that are coming up from trials with, of course, all the teams that were there in the previous season. So now as we look towards the next season, who are you worried about?
Clockwork again?
No, actually, like from looking at how Chris and Do beat Clockwork, we think that we can do the same. Like if we just play a coordinated DPS, I think that's the way to beat them. Now it was just like break their streak, and I think they will. I don't think they will do well in Contenders actually, unless they adapt something, because now people know how to play against it. And I think it's it's going to affect them in Contenders. But I still think the best teams in Contenders is British Hurricane. So that's the team I'm going to be most worried going against.
Well, I mean, in the Monkey Bubble tournament yesterday in the grand final versus Clash, we actually saw Clockwork doing some interesting swap ups that we hadn't really seen too much. In fact, during a lot of trials as well, we saw Zytor swapping onto Genji and Tracer. We saw Engineer on Hanzo. We saw Moose on Wrecking Ball. Like, they've actually started to flex a little bit, but by their own admission, they're probably going to stick to their composition, for the Contenders period. But knowing that they are able to flex a little bit, does that make you a little bit nervous, or do you still think you guys are going to be able to come out on top?
No, I think if they start flexing to other heroes, their magic will disappear. They won't be as skilled on other heroes as the ones they've made popular with Clockwork Vanilla Comp. So I think when they start playing other heroes, they flex around. It's going to be way easier to counter their picks because I also think one of the only reasons that they make that comp work is because they're so good individual on each of the heroes. I don't think it's going to transition if they play to other comps.
Well, that is a hot take, and I'm excited to see. If you're proven wrong or correct. Let's chat a little bit about North America now. So obviously, Triumph came through Open Division undefeated. You guys barely. I think I heard
3 maps. 3 maps.
Yeah, 3 maps
all season, right?
It was 2 maps and a tie.
That's important.
Wait.
Yeah. So it's not even 3 maps.
One against Wave Check. No, you lost one against Citizens. You lost the
one against Wave Check, and that's it.
And one against Tea Party in
playoffs.
So throughout the whole season, 3 maps.
Yeah. Okay. So
I was gonna say,
right?
Please don't tell me I'm wrong. I've been saying
you're right.
too much.
But against one of those games, we were playing like with a sub on one of those games. I think against Citizens.
That's right. You had Baboon. It was Baboon.
Yeah, it was Baboon instead of Decode.
Yeah, for Citizens match, and even then, it was only 1 map drop.
And it's not that like Baboon is not good or anything, but it's like Decode is smurfing in Contenders. Yeah, it's pretty much smurfing in Contenders.
Actually,
oh my god,
the
matchup between Decod and Luft yesterday was so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
Holy cow, those nuts. 2 Ryans are so big.
You should probably wait until we get like really good matchups against main tank, and you'll see like what's the difference between Decod, between Decod and other main tanks. It's like it's nuts. The scrim results are absolutely insane.
And I was kind of shocked that you guys actually managed to keep Decod, right? Because I feel like a lot of the times when what is you can easily call Decod a Contenders player. I think he's better than a lot of the main tanks in North American Contenders now. Yeah. So I was surprised that an academy team didn't just come in and be like, hey Decod, here's a bunch of money. I was kind of surprised by that.
I wouldn't like say too much information about anything. But I would say that we are probably the only team like in history that have refused a lot of offers to stay together as a team. A lot of offers that
run away.
I mean, but Runaway
in Trials history.
But Runaway has been like I think I'm not sure, I don't know about the facts, but they have been contracted, have been like in a house together, but we're not. We're like kind of like everyone to his own thing, different countries playing together online, and some of us have received a lot of offers that we have simply said no to, just because we want to play together and see how far we can go.
I love that. I love those kinds of stories. I actually suspect that it's probably going to be something similar for Clockwork, that they might want to kind of stay together, which will be difficult with Zytor being like 14, 16, something like that. Yeah. All right, so the first 2 matches have come and gone. You guys came out on top. I think WaveCheck pushed you guys the hardest over the course of the weekend. Obviously bringing you guys to a 3-2. That was such a close match there, and clearly a lot stronger than what they were looking in Open Division. But what about your first match? How did you guys feel? How did that one go?
To be fair, it was really, really easy. Like, it was not even like a matchup for us. Like, I'll be honest. Like, internally, like, we have really, really good scrim results against really, really good teams. I'll go as far as saying that in trials, like we are like not really worried about it. Like anything could happen, you know, at the end of the day, but we're not really worried about anybody. We have a lot of styles we can play, a lot of comps we can play. We have like pretty much ready for a lot of things. But against Luminance, we kind of expected them to be slightly better. We come with the idea of like the other team of being like equally as good, so we wouldn't like start like throwing our matches.
Don't do that.
So yeah, but that it was a pretty easy game. Like I'm not gonna beat around the bush and say it was close and anything like, but it's just the way it was. It was like really easy. Against Wave Check, things got pretty interesting. They haven't been improving a lot throughout the course of trials, because we played them in OD. They were also good. I would say that internally, like scrim results, they were like one of the teams that gave us a lot of hard time from time to time. They have really good players and talented players that I think have really bright futures. Yeah, and that's pretty much it about those two teams and those two games.
Well, you've got some more games coming up. What are you the most excited for? What are you the most nervous for? Which match do you think is going to be the toughest?
I would say the most interesting match would be against Boston Academy.
Yeah.
That would be a really interesting matchup, I would say, for anybody to watch. But the rest, I don't know.
Match too, right?
Yeah, it's our last match. So at this point, like it like wouldn't really matter for the record because at this point in Contenders, people already know if they're qualified or didn't qualify. But it would definitely be a really good matchup.
Wait, at this point?
Almost.
No, in North America, it's almost.
Almost.
I was about to say it's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Holy cow!
In Europe, you have to wait until the last week.
Who do you think will not make it into Contenders of the 8 teams?
In North America?
Yeah.
Probably, I would say Luminance, 100%. I mean, like that's just what I think. If you want my honest opinion, I would say. And let me see. Wait, I need to check out.
I think, if you'd asked me before this weekend, I would have said Luminance, Last Minute, and Wave Check.
Right.
But I feel like Wave Check actually did pretty. What was their first?
I think Wave Check are going
Uprising.
Yeah.
I mean, they did take a map though. Although I've heard that Uprising were like
bad. I think it's hard to say because I feel like Last Minute taking Bermuda going to 5 maps with like both the open division teams they played, and then also Wave Check and Triumph playing close. I feel like the last 4 spots are kind of in flux between a lot of the OD teams. I think Triumph sits above. I think Triumph definitely makes it. But it's hard to say. I think Luminance is going to be riding the struggle bus.
Yeah,
but the other team, I couldn't tell you right now.
Yeah, and they're a pretty new team. Like I think they have joined only just before trials, so they didn't have time to practice.
Half the team came from HSL, the last season, the last roster in Open Division this most recent season.
Beto actually came from Young and Beautiful. He played the last match with us, but
oh yeah, you're right.
I guess he didn't believe in us going to Contenders, so he moved on.
Wow.
Oh, that's
okay.
That would be pretty ironic after trials ends.
Well, yeah, there you go.
Well, now that mic has been dropped.
Yeah, let's give me a sec to recuperate myself. Oh yeah, so this is a bit of a meme question, so just go with it. How much do you accredit of your success to the fact that half of your roster is EU?
Oh, wait, you're asking me?
Yeah.
All right, so I didn't read it. Let me understand the question again correctly. Could you say it again so I can understand it better?
How much do you think your success has to do with the fact that half of your team is EU?
True that.
I mean,
our producer knows what's up. He just was putting out EU better than NA.
I'm outnumbered.
Okay, like I would say that most of EU is better than NA. That's I think that is true, a true statement. But it depends on what role. I would say the most significant role that you could see a difference is the DPS role between EU and NA. EU Europeans are much better than NA.
Now
players.
that's surprising because most people say that it's tanks. Everyone talks about how EU loves
Yeah.
tanks.
Yeah, NA has a lot of like somewhat good tanks as well. EU has really good tanks as well. But I would say like if you want a significant difference, it's an DPS role. You would see like a really big difference.
I think you just triggered someone in the Twitch chat.
I mean, if the truth triggers him, I mean, I don't know.
It's Samito, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Going soldier in scrims now.
No, but Sam. I mean, Sam is like Sam is like a phenomenal. Like I'll explain like my opinion about Sam, right? Because if we talk about my team, like when he was like initially like joining and when we're told who we're gonna play with because there have been like open tryouts, a really big like a really large portion of players. I was kind of like I didn't know Sam before. I knew he was a streamer, and when you like see a streamer, you kind of assume he kind of is like a memer, like kind of it's not that good. But when he joined, like something about Sam like made like he was like a missing like Sam is not only like mechanically really good. He's like he has something like in his like I wouldn't like in his communication that is like a missing piece to a lot of really good teams, you know? It's like hard to explain. Like we have tried playing without Sam, like a sub when he was off, and you could feel like that there's like something that is like very important that is missing. We were not doing as good as we would without Sam.
Aww.
Yeah.
That's so wholesome.
So yeah, I love you, Sam.
Aww. Man. All right, so you guys have got a couple games left. Geez, I'm really excited to see what the results of NA are going to be. I'm kind of sad that this episode is before NA is done, but we'll have another episode soon, TM, so we can talk a little bit about what happened in the rest of trials. Let's kind of move on to our next topic. What about bets?
Bemi was just in your ear saying make bets. Bemi's trying to bring the spice.
I mean, we can do that. If you guys want to do that at the end of the show, if we've got some time, we can look at that as well. But for the time being, let's move on to our next topic. And this is going to be a nice one. It's the PTR changes. But before we jump straight into that, just a reminder to everybody, get your questions into the Twitch chat, or you can !grind and come join us in our server, and you can pop them into the get question channel. At the moment, we don't really have too many questions, so we might have to skip that section. But please, guys, if you do have questions, our guests are itching to answer them. So definitely pop those in. Let's move on to the PR change. And before we get into it, I'm just going to give an overview of some of what I feel are the bigger ones. Kind of notwithstanding the replay. Obviously, we all know that's fantastic. Batiste getting a bit of a buff there, so possible changes to bunker. Diva, Matrix being reduced from 15 to 10 meters. McCree's Peacekeeper, the difference that 0.1 seconds makes. The Orisa barrier, more of a quality of life thing, that it doesn't interrupt reload when you place the shield. Symmetra one, Torbjorn, the rivet gun, the damage reduction of about 2 damage per second. And the changes to the assault map, which we can go over in a little bit. So just as kind of a broad spectrum, what do you guys think of these changes, and how do you think it might affect the meta going forward?
I can't wait to watch teams just stare at each other in bunkers for 8 minutes at a time.
Oh, yeah. I was saying this before the podcast started. Like, everybody hates GOATs because it's 6 people wailing on each other for 3-minute fights.
And nobody died? Yeah, you guys thought nobody died before.
And now we're going to have Orisa that can put down shield while reloading. So shield will, like, be popping a little bit more continuously. The mirror bunker comp. I mean, people are going to be crying to have GOATs back if that becomes the new meta.
I mean, I do think that GOATs is still going to be really strong. There's nothing in here other than like the Diva nerf that really affects GOATs in a negative way. It more just makes bunker better where it was already good, right?
Yeah.
And the teams that ran bunker are just going to run it more now. And the teams that like their goats and don't want to mess around with bunker are probably going to stay goats because the defense matrix range really only affects. I think it affects the 3-3 matchup most because D.Va has to play a little closer to Zarya now. The enemy Zarya, that is, and it's even more difficult to try and eat the grabs now. In regards to, I mean, I'd be interested to see what these guys have to think about it. They're probably smarter about the game than I am, but I don't really think the D.Va affects goats going into like bunker comps that much.
You could start probably, Hunni. You could share your opinion.
Mm,
You saw it firsthand. So.
yeah, I actually don't think it's gonna do a lot of change. I think Goat or Bunker will still be like a gimmicky thing, and I think people specializing in it will still like be able to run it. But I think it's only gonna be super good for maps like Assault, Hanamura, and stuff where you can actually rely on high grounds and try to trick off people, because I still think DPS is going to be such a good counter to people who's not specialized in playing the bunker. So you can just run triple or quad DPS even and just spam out the shield. I'm not sure if the Orisa change is going to change anything about that. I do think the Baptiste change can do some things about the free comp. I think you can see some variations of goats with maybe a Baptiste instead of Lucio on defense, especially because of the extra ammo she gets and. In her healing, and also her ultimate, is it longer duration or is the window larger? I cannot remember.
It's longer duration.
It's longer duration, yes. So I think that's going to be pretty good for defending teams on like Numbani. If you played like first point defense, you can utilize high grounds with playing goats comp with a Baptiste instead of Lucio.
Was it you guys that were doing that in the EU trials?
No, Paris Academy did it.
Oh, right. It was Paris.
Yeah, and some teams are also doing it. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's going to be more viable. But I do not think the D.Va change is going to matter a lot. I think it's going to be a little bit of the same. You just have to put your D.Va closer to the Zarya, like you said. So yeah, I'm not sure if we're gonna see a lot of changes, except from the maybe free goats with Baptiste instead of Lucio.
It's actually a variation I hadn't considered, because I remember when Baptiste first came out, a lot of teams were experimenting with it, and everyone just kind of dropped it as not as good. But that's an interesting thought. If the buff somehow kind of brings it back in, makes it a little bit more viable. Awkward, what say you?
I mean, I agree with Hunni about the D.Va matrix. I don't think it would matter that much. Really good, good D.Va players would still be good and useful. The only thing that I could think of that it would kind of be like the nerf would that some D.Vas like play behind walls, you could say, and they matrix like with a certain angle that you can see the D.Va, but the matrix still passes. And that wouldn't work anymore, but it still doesn't matter because now they just have to position a little bit differently. But at the end of the day, it's all about adaptation. And good players will adapt pretty fast, so it wouldn't really matter. For the bunker, I think that it's buffing bunker, like buffing like characters that are in the bunker comp, like Baptiste and Orisa, is not a really smart move. The meta would be really, really stale and boring, not only to watch, but also to play against bunker comps. Like, if you heard communications within like bunker comps, it's like, yeah, shoot Orisa shield. Oh, Orisa shield's about to break. Oh shit, he has another shield. And then he just had to...
I was casting the which match was it? The Tea Party match yesterday, I think, where they ended up going attack Bastion into a defense Bastion bunker. And literally, like, for a minute and a half, it was just two teams staring at each other, dancing back and forth between cover and their Orisa shields. Yeah. And I was like, give me goats any day.
I think we saw that in EU trials as well. I can't remember the two teams, but I remembered watching this going, really, guys? It's ridiculous. Yeah, so hopefully we don't see too much of that on the attack. What about the McCree changes? How do you feel about them overall? And do you think it'll, like, change anything? Like, on a professional level? Not like rank, obviously, it'll probably change things in comp, but on a proper professional level.
From what I've seen and what I've checked, McCree is really, really strong. Like, the fire rate is really insane. But once again, you have to be like good at the character, like to be able to pull it off. McCree right now doesn't have a lot of room in the current meta, I would say. I don't think that buff is what's gonna change it, but definitely like if a meta shifts somewhere, I definitely can see McCree coming into play.
What do you guys think of Symmetra goats?
It's really just if you want to like catch the other team off guard. I find most of the time, like you're like, haha, they won't expect the Symmetra now, and then you just get to the point and it's like, what do you do now? Come kill us? Oh, whoops.
No, it's pretty much like that. It's hey, I'm bored of playing my character. Let's try Symmetra goats and see what
Get
happens.
me out of brig jail. Or diva jail.
And see what happens.
A lot of the time.
I mean, if you can play like a super stable combo like goats against goats, and you can play like the Symmetra instead of a diva, you can use the Symmetra beam to shield spam, but that just requires the other team to not run you over. So I don't think it's viable, but it could be a fun gimmick to see sometime if you know a team is just gonna stand there without running you over.
If the other team just doesn't play the game, we can win with this.
Yes.
I think no, now we're getting into memes, but I think my favorite meme that Blizzard's come out with recently is the Brigitte police skin. She's taking you to brig jail. I love it. Okay, so now that we've covered the hero changes, let's talk a little bit about the assault map changes, which I've heard two different sides of the story. So if you believe that it is going to change the snowball potential, then obviously these are the changes everyone has been waiting for. But after having spoken to a coach the other day, he says it might actually make it worse. So let's talk about the changes a little bit, and then, well, I'll read the changes and then we can talk about them. So obviously the first one is the time awarded for capturing point A has been reduced from 4 minutes to 3 minutes. So you have less time to push point B. Then upon losing point A, any defenders that are dead or die like shortly thereafter have a maximum respawn of 3.5 seconds. So obviously that means that the defending team will respawn a lot faster and will be able to set up on point B faster. So let's talk about this. Do you guys believe this will fix the snowball issue?
I think fix might be a bit of a strong term. I do like the reduced to 3 minutes for point B. I think that's just across the board a good idea. But also it kind of, I also feel the defender's advantage is kind of strong now for point B. Because I mean, a lot of the time you'll just see defenders just roll out and spawn one by one and stall up to like 2 minutes off the clock if you're doing it right. And 2 minutes off the clock when you have 4 minutes, it's like, ouch, that hurts, but you know, it's not the end of the world. 2 minutes off the clock when you only have 3, yikes.
Yeah.
Well, I just need to actually just find, sorry, I'm looking for it now, where I was told that it would actually make it worse. And this was in fact sent to me by the coach of Young and Beautiful, David. He's a friend of mine. My turn to name drop. He says the attacker spawn advantage mechanic won't reset between points as often now, since recontest will be more common. Stalling a point will give attackers better ult economy for point B. Defenders will always be able to hard stall each point. Less time from capping combined with the transitional spawn timer for defenders will lead to 2 to 3 less fights. So teams will either end up rolling through both points with ult economy and or attacker's advantage buffer from first point, or get stuck after capping first point.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think when it comes to a change like this, it's like, I personally, as someone who just casts the game, I'm more of a, here's my theories. Let's see how it goes.
Like from playing with David, he loves this. He loves these facts about 2CP. Like I haven't really talked to him about the changes because I just came home from vacation 2 days ago, so I haven't really been able to talk a lot to him about the changes. But from what I've heard from him, he's not a fan because, like you say, it can maybe do some bad changes in his opinion. But I do think that on some points it's gonna decrease the snowball potential because you can only spawn that 3.5 seconds later after they cap the point. But on other maps, 2CP, where there's like a certain choke to hold, you will still it's still going to be able to roll in through that choke before you get the retimes, and then it's just going to be like you have to actually find a pick on point before winning the fighter's defense. Also because of the attacker's advantage on point with delayed respawns. If you have that 3 people on point cap increase, or what's called attacker's advantage, he says. So I'm not sure if I like the change, but I just have to play it out and see how it goes when it rolls out on live, because I don't really know what it's gonna do yet.
Also, a question about the PDR changes. Is this also like taken into consideration like overtime? Like if you die overtime on point A, does it still like go to 3.5 seconds? Because overtime has extra like time that you like takes you to respawn.
Isn't that only on point B, or is that also on point A?
No, that's also an A.
Yeah.
Ah.
But I don't know.
That is a good question. They don't actually address that.
They don't address that. That's why I was kind of curious. Maybe somebody knows.
So that could also affect. I suppose it would. I mean, if they don't specifically address it, then they're just gonna shorten those respawns back down to 3.5. Like, hey, you've been respawning for 12 seconds. Now you've lost the point. 3.5.
Yeah.
I mean, you've already lost the point, so it doesn't really make much of a difference.
No.
Could be. All right. Well, that's that for the PTR changes. Now we're going to do something a little bit fun. And what's going to be great about this is we can talk a little bit about the different metas that are currently in Overwatch that we're going to be seeing, hopefully, coming up soon. So I'm going to ask my producer to just change screens quickly. All right. So we're going to take Clockwork, the team, and put them in a box for a second. As a general rule, you shouldn't run Orisa on attack. So it's interesting that those two teams decided that we're going to experiment with the Clockwork comp on attack.
This little box would be called my avoid list, by the way. Just saying.
Wow, that's toxic.
Thankfully, they have to keep comp together, so you just gotta avoid one of them, right?
Yeah.
Well, they can't comp together anymore.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
right.
Yeah, unlucky. All right, let's move on to the next composition. Most people should be familiar with this one, but again, there are some variations. So tell us a little bit about Dive.
Well, I mean, Dive was kind of the staple of the meta for a long time, right? If you've been watching Overwatch, just Winston Diva. The classic Dive was Genji Tracer, and then the supports. My understanding is the supports changed around some, but a lot of times
Zen Lucio most of the time.
Yeah, Zen Lucio, and then for like a little bit, people tried Mercy, and then they realized it was not good. But you just you just jump on a person, you dive on them. There's a reason it's called that. It's right there in the name.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as we said, there have been some interesting variations. Obviously, the OG was the Tracer Genji, and now we see a little bit of Sombra coming into the mix there. I've actually seen Moira as well, which always makes me like, what?
Yeah.
I think that there's the idea is that you like fade in and get a bunch of healing. And every time I see that, every single time I have seen a team try that, the second the Moira uses fade, they pop. They just instantly die.
If you play the dive with the Moira, you're relying so much on getting the instant pick, like when you jump, like if they survive the initial jump, you're gonna end up lacking damage, and the Moira is so exposed. So I only think the Moira dive is super viable if they have like a super squishy comp with Sen and Mercy even, and then you need to get the first pick still, or you're gonna end up losing.
I also don't think Moira is that good with maps with really high grounds Horizon Lunar is like I don't think it's a good map.
How are you gonna run Moira dive on Gibraltar? You don't.
You don't.
I'll get you there, guys. In a minute. Go on.
Don't worry, guys. I'm tossing the orb up there. It'll pass you for like 8 seconds, and then you'll all die. But for those 8 seconds, you're gonna be good.
We got this. All right, moving on to the next composition, Double Sniper. Sounds self-explanatory, but just in case, tell us about Double Sniper.
Yeah, so you basically had an Hanzo and a Widow, And then you had Mercy, Zenyatta, and Winston Diva. And was it just about getting picks? Like on defense, you were just trying to make space for your own sniper so you could duel their snipers, while the attacking side was doing the same thing. And it was terrible playing support in this meta because you couldn't peek anything. Like the moment you peek out from a corner or something, you just have Hansan Widow staring at you. So from a support's point of view, I think this was the worst meta to play, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. I hated double sniper as well.
Oh god, I just realized we've got 3 support mains in this chat. Well, there you go. Solidarity, rise up. Oh, there you go. 4 producers also a support main. Paul, what are you?
I haven't touched ranked for more than like 8 minutes in the last 6 months. I think based off this season, you would call me a
really happy person.
Yeah. Yeah. Oof. Yeah. Let's pretend I'm an off tank.
Okay, that's fine. All right, goats. Now we have spoken that one to death, so I don't think we need to cover that one. Hog triple tank. Also, I think kind of self-explanatory. Although I haven't seen that run too much. We did talk kind of before the call started about Slambulance, which we'll get to in a minute. But this is Hog triple tank. And now, where might we actually see something like that? What kind of situations would that? Yeah.
I mean,
this was like the Ninjas in Pajama comp, right?
This was like the comp very popular around like 16, 17 winter. And you just had like Ryan, Diva, Roadhog, and then you would have like a Tracer or Soldier. Or even a Genji. I remember the Chavs with Fisher back then, they ran Genji just because he was a good Genji. And then Ana Lucio. So this comp was like basically around getting a pick, because Roadhog was also like super one-shot potential back then. Even if he hooked a Sari or Reinhardt, he could one-shot the most of the time. I don't think it's viable to play anymore because of the Roadhog changes. But back then, when he could actually one-shot tanks, it was a viable comp because you could rely on getting the picks. And then when you had like a pulse bomb or something, it was 400 damage back then, so you could also kill someone with the pulse bomb, even tanks.
Oh yeah, I remember those days, dark times. All right, McCree Doomfist, also pretty self-explanatory, but I want to know, where would you actually run something like that? Because that's an interesting combination of DPS heroes. Maybe I'm crazy, but that, I don't know.
McCree Doom, like, I'm thinking also there's been a phase where people played a lot of Sombra Doomfist, and I think it's worked.
Yeah, that was the Goats counter a couple months ago.
I think McCree Doom, Sombra Doom would be really good in maps like King's Row, where you have a lot of like space for the Doom, like really low, not too much space. I mean, like so that he can just like be really, really useful and get away really fast. McCree, like also like it's really good where he can like do consistent damage when people are trying like to try to flank, possibly try to like pass chokes and do a lot of things. I would say they like in maps like King's Row that are really, really small, but yet have like little high grounds that you could play from.
Maybe like Oasis University too.
Oasis University, yeah. I think I mean, yeah, I could see that like how it works. Yeah, definitely.
All right. This is a fun one. So no limits. For anybody that recently tuned into Overwatch, there was a time long ago where if you so chose, you could run like 3 Tracers and 2 Lucios.
6
whatever floats you. Yeah, there you go, that too. 6 Symmetras, why not? I mean, we really don't have to discuss that one. That's pretty. It's the arcade.
It's hardly even a meta.
Exactly. I mean, it was
really
so free for all.
That nobody knew what Overwatch was back then. Bastion had a personal shield. We don't want to talk about it.
Oh Lord. Oh, those were dark times. All right. So for the next one, we actually don't know what Omnic Crisis is. We had a discussion about this before the podcast started, and we got no clue. So, chat, if you have some ideas, you can like drop them in the chat so we can figure that out. But for the meantime, we'll move on to Pharmacy. Tell us a bit about Pharmacy, guys.
So my I don't know, what the original pharmacy comp was like. It was before the rest changes, so it was just like you had everyone go in, try to get a kill, and then or like you just trade kills. So you try to kill as many people you could while also dying yourself, and then your mercy was just hiding, and then both teams actually did this. So it always ended up being like 4 or 5 man reses, and then the fight would just reset, and it was so terrible to play against. And also play ass because it was just you would throw everything into the first fight, and then out of nowhere everyone would just be back up again, and it would just be a second fight without having any ultimates, and then you would just rely on your tracer or Pharah popping off and getting a second pick to end the fight. But it was something at least.
Jeez, I actually remember because I've been playing Mercy for most of my Overwatch career. I'm not a cliche, by the way. And I can remember going down point. Oh man! And when you could like on Gibraltar third point, when you could raise people from below the floor, like in spawn. Oh man, magical times.
Dark days.
Yeah.
And then they added the invulnerability while she's raising. Oh man,
Oh, no.
those are the days. Bring it back. All right. Next on our list is quad DPS. So tell us a
Yes,
bit
the
about
worst
quad.
meta to cast.
Yes. Oh my god. You think bunker's bad? Do you know how difficult it is when there's 4 DPS off doing their own thing
Look-
on some corner of the map?
Okay, so caveat. So for people who might not know how like production can work, for like the lower levels where you're at like tier 2-ish, generally like low tier 2, tier 3 level, right? There's
Yeah.
2 different types of observing as a caster that you get, right? One is where you get a clean feed. It's where you just get what the audience gets and you cast over that. But the other is where you are in game and you have to cast what you see. So when I am in game, and there's quad DPS, I am desperately trying to figure out who is just gonna kill somebody next. And if it's quad versus quad, I'm done for. I'm done. Anybody can hit anyone anywhere on the map, and I can almost never accurately talk about what the viewers get to see on screen. If there's a clean feed, it's not too bad. But if I'm doing it for like open division, I want to
Yikes.
slam my head into the desk.
But we were actually talking about DPS compositions working well against Clockwork, and we did actually see a couple of teams trying quad DPS instead of triple DPS. And I found the biggest issue with that was once your Mercy died, you were kind of done for.
Yeah, quad DPS I don't think it has enough. Like against bunker, like it's good spam. It really depends on the map, but like it's not really reliable. You don't like. There's really good pressure on shields and everything, but there's no like. Well, what if you had a corner? What do you do then? Like, like you just sit there in your corner doing nothing.
Sounds like a good game.
It's
All right.
like Hanamura A, right? Like if you try and run quad into a bunker on Hanamura A, if they just rotate back to the stairwell by the point, it can be pretty freaking difficult to actually, hit the shield.
Yeah. Quad was really like on Hanamura first, like it would really be really good against goats, but even then, like even if you would like win the fight, it would take you like at least 3 minutes to get the cap. So it wouldn't really be worth it.
And then you have to either try and run it on B, which good luck, or swap and have no.
Yeah, the biggest issue was like even if you capped it, like let's just say after 3 minutes, right? Then they played goats to have ultis, and then you are forced to swap to goats, and then you go to B Hanamura, and you fight goats with ultis when you don't have, and then they get a snowball effect at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, you have to play goats versus goats, and you would lose because they would have ult advantage.
I also think quad DPS was mainly a counter to goats. Like one map I particularly remember was Lijiang Garden, where you would have one team rolling out on quad DPS and the other team rolling out on goats. And the moment the goats team saw that they were playing quad DPS, they would go back to swap. And then the moment the quad DPS team would see that they swapped from goats, they would go back and swap goats too. So then they would just be like, you just swap forever until point locks, and then like the map would be like 2 minutes in before anyone capped the point because you would just have two teams swapping and spawn because counter picks.
Yep. All right, before we move on to the next composition, I see Sci-Fight, aka Chase, is in the chat. So if we could all just wish him a happy birthday, please.
Happy birthday
Sci-Fi.
to you.
Hell yeah. All right. Moving swiftly along. So we mentioned Slambulance just a moment ago. Tell us a little bit about the Slambulance composition, particularly for those that learned today what Slambulance is. Awkward.
Yeah, I didn't have any idea. Like, what the hell is Slambulance? Who
That's
even
the,
like?
that's the best name. Best name out of all of them.
Oh, did you
Yeah.
play with Kaffe in Zen Gaming when you were running quad tank all the time? Awkward, or was it another?
No, it wasn't. No, it was not
No,
me.
it was another. Because I remember Zen Gaming with Kaffe back in the days. They were the only team like trying to perfect this because they had Kaffe.
Yeah, no, because Shumpy was also a one-trick Roadhog,
also
so
Roadhog one, yeah.
yeah, back in the day, so.
But it was just relying on getting Grav Diva bombs or getting a fat nade into a Grav.
Yeah.
Because the original Slambulance or quad tank was with Ana Lucio, because Moira was not back out then. And you would just rely on getting a Grav and Diva bomb, land a huge shatter, or getting a hook with Roadhog. So I think that was, I don't think it's viable anymore, but it was super fun to play, especially if you have good Roadhog players. They could carry a whole team back then.
Yeah, and it's also pretty fun to play Hog, honestly. So
Yeah,
It is.
Yeah. I must just come back to Clockwork. Moose is one of the most insane Roadhogs. Every time I watch Clockwork, I have flashbacks to Kib in the World Cup on King's Row, hooking pharaohs out of the sky. Oh man, sorry. Okay,
I think everybody's seen that clip of Moose on Numbani now, right? Where
yes, with the
he
mercy.
flicks and gets the mercy. I mean,
Nutty.
man,
Yeah.
man, it's a monster.
A good Roadhog is terrifying. All right, the last composition, and as I mentioned previously, I was a Mercy main, so this is my favorite meta, the Moth meta.
no.
No. Y'all thought Brick Jail was bad. Remember Mercy Jail?
Yeah.
I played main support for Singularity when the Mercy was when it was super good at least.
Oh, no.
And I just remember the Mercy, like you could do everything. You could frag out when you had Valk. You could, and then when somebody died, you would just rest them, and then you had a second rest at least prior to the changes. And it was just, man, and it was also the time you played double sniper, so it was just about getting the rests out as early as possible. Because then when you get the third pick, you could not rest anymore, and you would eventually win the fight. But Mercy was super broken. Like it wasn't even fun to play. I think.
Yeah, like I remember I also like ringed one time as main support like for the Team UK before the World Cup, and we played that. I was like the whole stream I was thinking, like, what is this? Like, wow, like what? Like, how would people enjoy this? This is like so fundamentally like you don't have any discipline, nothing, just people running around dying, and you just rest them.
That sounds amazing. What do you mean?
It's terrible. It's terrible. Trust me.
All right. So that's all of the different metas. So now we start to rank. Okay. So let's start with Beyblade. Where would you guys rank this? It's a 6-tier ranking system. So from S, A, B, C, D, E, S obviously being the best and E being the absolute worst. Where would you rank Beyblade?
So I have a question. Is this like a power ranking or what much I like them ranking? Because earlier when you said don't, okay, that's good then. Because earlier when you said we weren't supposed to do these, and I did, I definitely did it by how much I like them. So we're good. It's a fresh start here. Fresh start.
Well, you guys are welcome to just do those. Put them on Twitter. Your like personal favorites. Put them on Twitter. Tag the grind. We'll do a retweet. But for this one, I think we'll keep it focused on power ranking. How effective are these compositions? But keep in mind, it's going to be kind of like for if you had to bring them back now, how effective would they be?
Oh, okay. So can we move Beyblade down to the E tier then? Actually, can we make a separate tier that is G? Is that a possibility?
No,
because if Reaper's on the map, you lose the game.
Yeah, I agree.
All All right. So what? So we're putting Beyblade right at the bottom. Bemi, you just click and drag on the actual name. Okay.
I think he's looking to see
add
if
an
he
extra
can make that G tier there. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right,
So
cool.
just giving
And then,
the nano boost change that it doesn't provide movement speed anymore. Reaper's just
Yeah.
not. It's terrible. It's so bad for him, even with nano boost.
all right. Next one being Bunker. Where would you rank Bunker?
Right
Hmm.
now, I mean, it's one of the like 3 compositions that actually gets played, right?
Yeah,
Right
so
now?
probably like A tier, I would put it.
Yeah,
Just
I would say
like-
A tier. It has its uses,
Yeah.
All right.
and where it's useful, it's really good.
All right. Next up, the Clockwork comp.
If you're Clockwork, you put it S tier, but if you're
Yeah.
anybody else, I think this is C tier at best.
I mean, I thought that like when I made it by myself, I thought it was like personal opinion, so I put it on E tier, honestly. But
Yeah. Okay, you guys definitely do your personal ones and put that on Twitter for us. Definitely, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Now that does create an interesting thing. I think we should be looking at this composition in terms of other teams, not Clockwork, because obviously
Yeah.
Clockwork are slaying with it. So, would you guys agree C tier? Are you happy with that as a power ranking?
I think, at least for the moment, yes. Until
Yeah.
teams figure out how to play it like Clockwork Vendetta, it's not good enough inherently as a composition. It doesn't have the necessary like synergies just off the bat.
yeah, I agree. I would put it on C as well. And nobody's gonna play it like Clockwork because nobody's gonna one-trick a character for an entire year. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
If you show me consistently that people are as good as at Torbjorn as engineer, I will doubt what timeline we're in.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was watching Obling stream the other day, and everyone was like, because he had his title as Torb Placements, and everyone was saying to him, "Why are you playing Torb?" And he's like, "I got told I have to learn Torb." So it's happening, boys.
Oh no. Well, but
All right.
Torb has uses. I mean, you can put Torb in like a bunker that isn't the Clockwork comp, right?
Yeah.
That's true.
That's not
Yeah,
too bad.
I also think like on top right now is super good against like as a counter dive hero because
Yeah,
you can't play monkey into that.
Yeah.
It's gonna change because it like there's a slight nerf to his right click on PTR, but Torb right now is just so OP and the molten core is a lot of damage as well. So I think Torb can be played outside of Clockwork. I think he's a S type
Yeah.
pick if you just mentioned the hero itself and not the whole comp.
Yeah.
All right. Next one is Dive. Where would you rate that in the power ranking?
If you play dive right now, you're gonna get shit on by break.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Like unless you're playing it into like a specific comp, right? Like if you
Yeah.
play dive into specific bunkers, like ones that don't have Torb,
Like classic dive, like some Genji Tracer.
I don't think anyone plays Genji
Yeah.
Tracer anymore. It's all Cyber Ninja now.
Yeah.
It's all
Sombra
Yeah.
Genji, Sombra Tracer.
Yeah. I think Sombra Genji is fine, not good.
It's I think it's good against bunker. Like if you can
Yeah,
build
exactly.
blade and
You
you
just
can
have
wipe.
a 3-alt win condition, right?
Yeah.
There's EMP Nanoblade. If you don't mess it up, there's
Mhm.
absolutely no way to,
Lose.
win a fight against it, right?
Yeah.
But outside of that,
Yeah.
I
Not
think if
really
you match
good.
it into like a smart bunker, or if you match it into goats, it's kind of trash.
Yeah.
So
So
I'd
where
say
are we
like
putting it?
B tier because it gets played, but
If it's classic like Tracer Genji, so probably E. But like if it's Sombra Genji, so yeah, probably like B or C. Just because it's good against bunker.
Yep.
And if you put bunker like on B, or A, I don't know where we put it.
we put
Put
bunker
it
in
on
A.
Put it on A.
So if you put bunker on A, you should put it like at least like B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
think
If
we'll be
you consider Sombra Genji.
Yeah, I think we'll go with Sombra Genji because that's just more realistic.
That's the dive that happens right now.
Yeah. All right, so we'll stick that in. Nice. Okay, next up, Double Sniper.
Oh man.
I think this
I
just
know we
depends
still
on
see that on Junkertown, which is cool.
Yeah, exactly. If you go to like Junkertown, you see it a lot, or you see it sometimes on Watchpoint too. Sometimes. A lot of teams have just opted into goats now, though, on Watchpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can also play it on maps where like assault maps like Volskaya First Point, where the attacking team is going to point and you have snipers on top, and I think it's super viable there, especially if you can play it with if you can play it with a super good Ash, because the dynamite is going to create so much pressure, and that's also a sniper. So I would put it around like an A tier on only on specific maps, but at least an A tier. It's my opinion on it.
Well, if we're saying that it's map dependent, which obviously lowers its viability slightly, we could probably drop it a level.
I think B would be a smart place, because if we put dive in, like, it has its specific uses, but it's not universally good. Double sniper kind of fits into that niche right now.
That is true.
Okay, so we're looking at B, yeah?
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Right, next up.
S. Put it in the S tier.
Anybody want to argue with that?
Probably not.
Yeah, no.
All right.
Just
Hog
do that
tank.
quick. Hog. You were saying Hog Triple Tank had like Tracer or Soldier in it when they ran it, right?
Yeah, that was back in the days. Now I think you can play it with the Sombra, like I think Paris Academy did it in trials. Actually, they played triple tank.
They got really good utility, so I would put it on E.
That is true. I would put it on E.
Yeah, I was gonna say like D at best.
Yeah, probably D or E.
It's hard to tell because I haven't seen it played. Because nobody is gonna risk that.
No, this is something I've mostly seen in our local Overwatch scene in South Africa, so it's not much to go on. But what I've actually seen is bunker composition, right? So with a Bastion and an Orisa and a D.Va and a Roadhog.
Yeah. No, that's a thing I've seen a few times. That was something we saw in Open Division in NA.
Yeah, I think we actually did see that
on Junkertown. The triple tank defense, like with the bunker, and then you run double sniper with it on Junkertown. That was really common. And then on offense, teams would do it with Bastion.
There you go. All right, so what did we say? E tier.
E tier, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Unlucky. Alrighty, next up, McCree Doomfist.
I think if we're assuming the Doomfist isn't Sparkle, then we put this also in like E tier.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. Drop it in E.
You would need a Danet or a Sparkle to make that happen, I think.
And even then, it would be D tier maximum.
Yeah, actually, with Danet. All right. So now for no limits. All right. So if you implemented that, it would change everything. It's not actually a meta.
I was gonna say.
But do you think teams would stop running goats if they were able to run more than one hero?
Yeah, you could play 6 Briggs.
Yeah. Oh god. Oh god.
That actually sounds amazing.
And that already puts it on S tier.
I was gonna say you just play 6 Pharas into goats, but I don't.
6 flails on the Pharah and he dies.
I'm just hearing like the Brig rally just go off over and over in my head.
Rally to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, mixing an ultimate in the middle of it. Rally to. Oh,
could you imagine watching a fight on like let's say like Control Center, and just 6 Brigs all pop rally at the same time? Do you think anyone dies for the next 30 minutes of Overwatch? Because they don't.
That sounds terrifying. All right.
6 numbers all invisible.
12 numbers all invisible. Let's go. Let's make it proper here.
It's just it's a game of chicken to see who defloats first.
I actually want to put it in S tier purely because of how it would just turn everything on its head.
We could say that.
6 wrecking balls.
Yeah.
You just spin around the point forever.
Stop playing pinball.
Literally 6 anything would be funny. Like 6 Dorbs.
Hey, 6 Torbs would be OP. Can you imagine 6 Molten Cores going out at the same time?
It would literally be the floor is lava.
All right, we're gonna stick that in S tier. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, nobody has been able to tell us what the hell the Omnic Crisis comp is, so we're gonna ignore that. Next up is going to be pharmacy.
Mm,
I mean, Fire Mercy in general right now is decent, but you just put it in a quad DPS, right?
Yeah.
So if we're differentiating and saying pharmacy is like its own thing, the Mercy Res doesn't exist like it used to. So I think the concept of pharmacy, where you just kind of throw the first half of the team fight, doesn't really work anymore.
No.
I still think Pharaoh Mercy is just super strong if you play it with the right composition.
Oh yeah.
So I think you could put I think you can put it on an A tie because you can, if you're good enough, you can both play it against goats and you can play it against Bunger. So I think it's pretty good still.
Yeah, in
so
and
I'd
of
say
itself,
A or
Mercy
B. Yeah.
Pretty good.
I mean, when you run that with Hanzo, particularly on something like Nepal on
Yeah, spam comp.
Shrine, yeah, I mean it's huge. So I think A tier works for me as well. Happy?
Yeah.
I'm good with
Hell
that.
All right, next up, quad DPS. Pharmacy is an A.
Quad DPS is kind of funky. I think it's fallen off a lot right now. Nobody really plays quad a lot. It's a lot of triple. It's a lot of triple just to get the spam going, right?
And it's also not easy to find 4 players who can play DPS on the same team. So.
That's true.
That is true.
Yeah.
And there's so many variations of quad DPS too, right? And it always depended on what your players could play. It was never like, okay, these are the 4 best DPS players to play together into a GOATS composition. It's just like, okay, what can we play that might work? Can you, hey, you over there, can you play Hanzo? No? Soldier? Okay, you're going soldier. All right. What do you play? Off tank. What do you play? Oh, you play Pharah? Sure, why not? You'll hit something with a rocket.
So I think what we're saying is E tier because of just how
I don't think
messy it
E
is.
tier.
It's not E tier.
I would say
still
C
good.
or,
Yeah,
or
C.
D.
I would say like
C.
B maybe.
B.
No, B is too much.
Yeah, I think.
Well,
B
because
is also-
I think it's still good against like GOATS and Bunker on paper, right? You just have to,
On paper, yeah. I don't, but
that's
on paper. Yeah,
I would go
think
C.
I'm outvoted.
All right, B it shall be. All right, we got 2 left, and then I think we have like a whole 2 questions, so we should finish marginally on time. So Slandulance, where are we sticking that one, boys?
I think the argument here is that it's just worse GOATS, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that is
feeding
true.
goats.
Now you played with a Moira and you have a hawk feeding like he's just an old battery.
Yeah,
I think a B or C would be the best.
Probably C.
I think B is way too high.
Yeah,
I'm just
B
gonna go
is
with
really
D.
high.
Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong.
I can't think of a single situation where I'm like, oh, I want to run quad tank here instead of GOATS. Like,
yeah, I can
maybe
dig
make the
on that.
argument
Yeah,
that the hook, like if you really want to get a pick, like the hook helps with that. But I mean, if we're talking in a vacuum where teams play like ideally in these compositions against each other, the hook isn't going to be as good as just the pure sustain GOATS has, right? So
Yeah.
I was gonna say D tier.
I can dig that. It sounds
I'll
fair.
I'll take it.
Hey, that's our first E tier. Let's go. All right, and the last one, Moth Meta. Again, keep your opinions at the door. Or your personal opinions.
If this is the original moth with 2 reses, instant res, not even the cast time, I would say because we put pharmacy so high, I would say S tier.
But the thing is, it's current res, right?
Yeah,
current
it
res.
has to be current. Yeah.
All right. Then
So
maybe
we're saying like E tier.
Yeah, you'll probably get demolished before you could like res anybody. Anyway.
Yeah.
Fine. E tier it shall be. Y'all are
Put a lot
terrible.
of needs here. We are not.
Yes,
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. The best compositions
about
of
it.
goats and something that lives within our imagination. Basically, what we're saying is
That's
we're all
so-
simple.
Goats in a fairy tale.
We love our goats.
All right. Before we go too much over time, so we can bring it back to the cameras now, so you can all see our lovely faces again. We will be putting that up on our social media, so you guys can go reference that a bit later. You can shout at us if you want to. Please don't tag me, tag them. Finally, let's move on to the questions, and we got like an extra question in the interim, so yay. Okay, so the first question, and I think we did somewhat cover it, but let's just do it again quickly. And this one came from David, the coach of Young and Beautiful, for anybody that wasn't too sure about that. What were your thoughts? Now, this comes back to the changes to the assault map. What were your thoughts on attacker's advantage? The 3.5 is hard locked. It won't go higher for that respawn.
I think the attacker's advantage is so good. Like, I remember when there was no attacker's advantage, the spawn would just be the same for the whole time. You could have people picking, you would have one guy picking May, then you'd have a Ryan pinning to the point every time he respawned to get a pick. And you would just be able to stall the point for 4 or 5 minutes because you would just go one by one. And the change they implemented with the attacker's advantage, it's like it's going to be increased to 15 or 16 seconds now. If you have like 3 people or more on point, more than the other team, so you need to have like 4 to 1 on point, and that's gonna stop a bit of these stalls. Like you can still do a really good stall if you go one by one and you manage to survive for a long time, but it's way harder to do so, and you will maximum get like 1 or 2 minutes max by stalling this way, and not 4 to 5 minutes like you could do before the attacker's advantage. So I think it's a good thing, at least.
I was also like watching a YouTube video that like the overtime spawn also like take like the more time it gets to respawn also depends on the time it's been overtime. And it could like I've never like seen it happen before in a match, but I think it was the maximum cap of like 30 seconds. Or like 25, I think. You could like literally spawn for 25 seconds. Which I think the attacker's advantage was like a really, really good thing that I implemented. I don't think 3.5 seconds is I think it's too little, honestly, because it's not only lets you like it not only lets like the attackers not be able to rush properly to the second point, which is like okay, fair, but like you could get into a really good position with 3.5 seconds, like respawn time.
Okay, cool. Next question. This one comes from Shaylock. To what extent do both players, okay, so the players, think that staff account for the success of a team? An example is if Triumph or Yab win, is it because Fragon/David prepared them for every scenario? Or if they win, is it because they played well due to the fact that they have a great squad of players?
Do you want to go ahead?
No, I think you start. I'm trying to.
Yeah. So with David, I really like David. Like I liked our old coach, but he's doing such an amazing work for us. I did not play the last match of Trials because I was going on vacation, so I was super nervous. But when I saw the scouting that David had done, he put everything into a document with how QLS played their comms and stuff. I was so confident that they could win even without me, because coming out of the plane, seeing that my team was at 2-0, that was amazing. Because then I just knew that we were in contenders. Like if we just won 2 matches or 2 maps, we would be in contenders. So I think he's doing an amazing job, and I think he's a very good addition to our team. And what he's doing is giving us an edge to be a better team.
For me, I think like specifically for my team, I think that the coaches have a really good reason of why we're being able to do so well. But if you ask this question generally, I would say that might sound like a BM to a lot of people, but I think that a lot of coaches are getting credit for something they don't deserve, or I think that a lot of coaches are that they're just like simply frauds, I would say. Oh man.
happened. Sorry, just to cut you off. Bemi has an alarm clock, which is literally just a siren. And before the show started, Paul was like, "We're just gonna it's gonna happen. That alarm is gonna go off, and we're gonna have everybody reacting like ah." There you go. It happened. His alarm went off.
So back to what I was saying is that I think a lot of coaches either they don't get enough credit for what they do, or they get too much credit for what they do. I think a lot of teams that are just generally really, really good, they have really good players, they have really good chemistry, and they're doing well. And there's like some coach that is kind of like average or even below average, getting all the credit because you know they want this or they want that. But it's because the players are good. It's not because like he did anything that is. I've had a lot of experience with coaches who are just not really good.
To kind of piggyback off that, I've seen a lot of coaches just kind of bounce around like the lower tier 2 level, where they'll coach a contenders team that gets relegated, and then they'll go on to coach another contenders team that gets relegated, and then they'll leave and coach another contenders team that gets relegated in a different region. And it's like, how do these people keep getting jobs? Just I know their resume says like and I mean obviously that's oversimplifying it, because it's not always like the coach's fault, but at some point you have to wonder, right? If you've had all these different rosters of contenders level players, what is actually going wrong?
If you want me to be completely honest of how like they're getting like these jobs or whatever, it's just because they know somebody and they just like, hey, let's just bring him over here. And it's not only with coaches, it's also with players, you know? There's a lot of like, I'm not gonna say names or anything, but like there are a lot of players in contenders that I would say that are just there just because they're friends with somebody, and they're like far better options out there that are could be a good replacement for some people.
So one of the best experience or like stories I know about coaching is like Saita when he was in contenders. Like it was whatever he would do with Giganti, and even how many people get poached every season, he would just still make a team which came back to be in the finals like every time. I have not worked with him, but looking from the outside, I think that guy is super smart, and he's doing a huge work for his team to be able to be so good.
And sorry.
No, I was finished. You can.
I was gonna say that like Curry Shot, right? Curry Shot was on 1point when they were really good. He moved to Mayhem. They dominated this season. I think there's a certain level to which a good coach when a good coach added to a already good roster is just insane. Whereas a bad coach added to a good roster can really kind of just ruin it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard horror stories. Somebody told me, because I've got a couple of coach friends, and one was actually telling me he picked up a main tank player whose coach once said to him, "Listen, just don't talk in comms," because the guy didn't know what to say in comms. He was like, "It's fine, you don't have to talk," as the main tank in goats.
What level of Overwatch is this?
I don't know. I never asked for specifics, but I think just to bring it back specifically to that question, a more direct answer is that it really is a balance. You've got to have good players that can pop off, but a good coach, as Paul said, will really bring out the best in those players. Got to have the balance. All right. Next question. This one comes from Cake OW. Shaking my head. The dumbest sounding comp that you want to work or that you think could work?
Is it BM to say Clockwork Vendetta comp?
I mean, it does work.
Yeah, exactly.
The way I feel about like Clockwork Vendetta comp is like all these like. Is they all 6 of them were flamed by everyone, and they united into one team to take revenge upon these players who have flamed them.
You know what would have been
and it's working, you know.
You know what would have been a good name? The EU ranked rejects.
Nice.
That would be a great.
What's wrong with you people? All right. The last question, also from Cake, was pineapple on pizza. Pineapple on pizza.
Oh hell no! Whoever eats it, no, it's terrible. Don't eat that, please.
I'm with Awkward. Not a fan.
I'm positive. I like it.
Yes!
Oh man.
We're two and two at
You're my best
least.
friend. All right, the rest of you are dead to me. Who needs my new friend?
Dude, hey, at least two exists somewhere.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. There's one last question, and this one's actually for me, and it's for all of you guys. How did you come up with your like game tag, IGN, whatever? How did you come up with it?
So when coming into Overwatch in my prior games, my in-game name was actually Kinex. But coming into Overwatch, when we started getting casters and so, it just reminded so much of Kelix, and the casters would like vomit it. So I changed it to Hunni or Hunni. Also because of my dog died, and that was named Hunni. So I just changed it both because of the name similarities and to remind me of my dog. Might be a bit corny, but I liked it.
No, that's adorable. What do you mean? Just to clarify, is it Hunni or Hunni?
In Danish, I would say Hunni, but in international, it's fine with Hunni.
Hunni it shall be. All right, Awkward, what about you?
Yeah, it's probably the most common question that I get. Where like did I get my nickname from? Honestly, like I always tell people that like if they knew me in real life, they would probably like not even ask this question because it's so obvious. I just like to do random stuff that is like embarrassing to other people in public and stuff like that. Like I have like I remember this is like a quick story. I remember when we had our flight to the World Cup in 2017 as Team Israel, right? And when we landed in Los Angeles, everybody was like on the plane, crowded. Everybody stands out about to leave, and then like our main support, right, is like across the hall, like sitting there, and I'm like shouting, "Hey, can you speed boost us out?" and everybody's like, "Holy shit, we don't know this guy. We don't, who is he?" Like,
that is actually amazing.
So that's pretty much my life. So that's why I kind of chose this.
All right, Paul, what about you?
I literally just sat down one day and I was like, you know, if I'm gonna start like doing things like on the internet, I like my old, like if you have me on like BattleNet, my tag is like Paulson2, which is like just some random thing I thought up of in like middle school or something, and I was like, that's so lame and not catchy at all. So when I was like, I think I want to start doing casting, I literally just sat down and I was like, what would be a name? What would be like a clever I don't know. I don't know. What do I want people calling me something other than Paul? Should I just incorporate that in? What's a good Paul pun? Paulsible. Yeah, Paulsible. That'll work. And the amount of times I've been called plausible media.
Nice.
I should have seen it coming. You just move the L and it's all over.
Nice. All right, guys. Thank you so much for for sharing your stories with us. That is going to bring us to the end of this episode of The Grind. Thank you to everybody that was watching. Sorry, we had a couple of technical hiccups, but for those of you that stayed with us, I really appreciate it. We've had a really fun episode here. We will be sticking the power rankings chart up onto Twitter, and these guys, I have encouraged them to post their personal opinion charts. Hopefully they will tag us so we can do a bit of a retweet there. Otherwise, thank you for joining us for episode 15, and we'll be giving out some information on the next episode as soon as possible. So for now, have a great day, week, and please do join us for NA Trials once again this weekend. It's going to be spicy as all hell. Other than that, yeah, guys, have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.